He's Bob Costas. Bob, thanks for calling in. How are you, Bob?
Rich, how are you, man? This doesn't make sense. I'm in your neck of the woods on the West Coast, and you're in my hometown of St. Louis, and we're on the phone. I should be sitting there at the desk with you and Rod.
I agree. But, hey, listen, I will take you any way I can get you. And it's supposed to be raining over there in Southern California, so I'm fine where I am. What are your thoughts on the Sunday night game, Bob? Dallas and Philadelphia, you'll be winging your way east for this de facto playoff game in the NFC East.
Well, you have to look at how easily Philadelphia handled them on Dallas's home field on Thanksgiving night and give the Eagles the advantage there. You know, the Cowboys have been up and down. They've played some games where you say to yourself, they're regressing, and then they bounce back and play impressively. But I just have to give the Eagles the advantage because of the fact that they're home and because of the fact that they had that win at Dallas on Thanksgiving night. When you think about the Eagles overall, though, if you think about their chances, you're kind of given pause by how poorly they did at Green Bay and by the fact that Seattle and the Legion of Boom was able to come in and handle that speed-up offense that the Eagles like to run. So you're not so sure how much you like the Eagles' chances down the road, assuming they make the playoffs, but I'd give them the edge on Sunday night.
Bob Costas joining me here on the phone, and I've got Rod Woodson right here on the turf in St. Louis.
Hey, Bob, one question. Everybody blames that blowout loss by the Philadelphia Eagles for 3 games in 12 days. How much of a factor do you think Tony Romo having a full rest and being more effective in this game that it will be?
Well, I think it's a factor. I think it matters. Without going into all the math, in a league that talks constantly, and I think for the most part sincerely, about trying to improve in areas of player safety, it's a brutal game that you can never make even close to 100% safe, but you can make it safer. It just doesn't make sense to pack games in this way. And without boring you with the math, if teams are going to play on Thursday night, if they were willing to say that every team out of 32 would play a Thursday game, and that would include 2 of them on the opening Thursday night with the Super Bowl champion, and 6 of them playing 3 games on Thursday, there's a way to give the participating Thursday night teams a bye the Sunday or Sunday off, whatever you want to call it, prior to that Thursday, and then you'd only have 2 or 3 Thursdays unaccounted for, and they'd probably be late in the season somewhere along the line, and maybe a couple of teams would have to bite the bullet and play on short rest. But you wouldn't have it as often as you have it now if you just made it policy that teams that play on Thursday don't play on Sunday.
And you could extend the regular season into February if the league does want to end up having a Super Sunday on President's Day weekend. That would also put this championship Sunday games in the sweeps month of February. There are monetary reasons as well as player safety reasons to go ahead and get an extra bye week but I remember, Rod, you remember they used to have 2 byes
weeks,
and the league didn't like that for some reason, right?
The players didn't like it. It was a long year because you had those extra week that normally you wouldn't have. And I think players are creatures of habit. They want to keep it as what they know. I don't think they would agree with a lot of players in the locker rooms.
Bob, I know you and Al are constantly looking at the Sunday night football schedule and looking at the schedules about flex games throughout the year, and you didn't flex any of them. Everything pretty much is going as scripted in a way. You're in Arizona next week for a huge game between the Seahawks and Arizona Cardinals, but I'm sure you have looked at that Week 17 schedule and started perusing it for where you might be for the annual Win and In finale. What do you think? I
started perusing it around week 5 or 6, mostly with my own comfort in mind, to be perfectly honest, because the game that looks most likely is Lions at Green Bay. And on December 28th, it could be epically cold. Not just a little cold, it could be epically cold. And at this point, I remember being 15 years old and watching the Ice Bowl game and saying to my dad as we watched it on our first color TV, wouldn't it be great to be at this game? And I meant it. But now I've been in enough games like that, or at least close to like that I'm just praying. I'm praying that if it's Lions at Green Bay, that somehow, some way, we get a 40-degree day in late December. Then Lambeau Field would be just beautiful. Other than that, put me in a dome. Put me in New Orleans. That could matter. Even though they could be sub 500, that could matter. Put me in Atlanta. That could matter.
That's the one that I'm circling. I circled that. Now, this is before Cam had his accident. But Carolina at Atlanta, Week 17, that's probably your winning-in scenario. And another interesting scenario, that New Orleans game to which you're referring, it is possible that there's a role reversal of the 2010 season, that the team that has a sub-500 record in the Saints, for instance, would welcome in the defending Super Bowl champions, as in Seahawks, for instance, and go ahead and beat them in a game that nobody expected to exist. That could actually happen again, Bob.
Yes, it could. In fact, we did that game that you're talking about. It was the Rams at the Seahawks, the last Sunday of the season, and it decided what was then a very so-so NFC West. And the Seahawks won the game, and like you say, they welcomed in the defending Super Bowl champion Saints, and Marshawn Lynch had a huge game, and they beat the Saints. The Seahawks won the game.
It could be absolutely reversed. And by the way, that Rams Seahawks game to which you refer, that's also the last time the Cowboys were not involved in the winning-in finale. They've had 3 of them, lost all of them, finished 8-8 in all of them. Bob, what did you make of the new conduct policy? What do you make of, just first blush, what you've read about the new policy and heard about the new conduct policy announced yesterday?
I'm sure as we analyze it, there'll be flaws and imperfections, but I think these are all steps in the right direction. But the problem they have, and I'm not telling you anything you don't know, is that they've antagonized the Players Association. Even if some of this is posturing, you would think that they would have brought them into the process in some way in crafting this, or at least been able to say, look, we invited them to the table, and if this were the case, theoretically, we found them to be unreasonable, but we invited them in on the process. We welcomed their input. Their input was not productive, and we can't sit around and wait, and so we produced this policy. But if DeMaurice Smith is able to truthfully say that they were not consulted, that they had no significant input, and then it was announced without their knowledge or without their being given a heads up, then that doesn't improve the relationship that they're going to have to work on going forward. I know that there's a collective bargaining agreement in place, but that doesn't mean that they and the owners have the upper hand in that collective bargaining agreement. They got the better of it at the bargaining table the last time. But still, it's a fluid situation in many cases, and they have to deal with DeMaurice Smith and the Players Association. So you would think that they would want to move closer rather than farther apart.
Well, Bob, you talk about the CBA, and I'm saying that's the bylaws of what the NFL players and the NFL have together. Isn't it the NFL players' responsibility to have that written inside the bylaws, that anything that's changed within the framework of the CBA has to be, co-signed with the NFL Players Association and the union?
Your point is correct, Rod, but I think in this situation, it's not enough to say that the Players Association didn't do as well as they should have at the bargaining table. This is an issue that now crosses over into public relations and the public's perception of the National Football League. And so they need to look at this aspect of it as regards player conduct in an entirely new light and say, we're not going to give up everything if we're the owners that we want at the bargaining table, but we're willing to kind of revisit this. We're willing to come back on this one aspect and go back to the negotiating table, listen to your input, and try and create some kind of system that the players, not just we the owners, not just the media, not just the fans, but that the players are also comfortable with in a reasonable way.
Bob, I got 30 seconds left. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you what in the world the LA Dodgers are up to in the last 24 hours. Go.
I think
thoughts.
more moves to follow. That's the way I look at it. They've got a young shortstop in their system, so Jimmy Rollins is a one-year thing, and I guess they think that Howie Kendrick can give them something that offensively that'll take up some of the slack left by D. Gordon. But they've got so much money that I think that more moves are around the corner before spring training.
Bob, thanks for calling in. It's good to chat.
And by the way, my hometown Rams are as good a team as will not make the playoffs as you'll find. They're playing really well.
Yeah, they are playing very well. I mean, they're the proverbial team nobody wants to play, Bob.
Exactly. Have fun tonight, guys. Good talking to you.
You bet. Right. Thanks again. That's Bob
The
Costas.
Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.